Okay, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about Hara and myself attending the meeting with three of the It Happens Here Society committee members from Newcastle University. These three committee members were Shannon Eleanor Aiken, who was the society president, Faye Horsley, who was the campaigns officer, and Emily Milner, who was the secretary. This meeting has sort of been a long time coming. We have been communicating with sort of the society and trying to set up a meeting. We finally got one, which is great. So yeah, I'll just sort of say what happened at this meeting. So we started off by talking to the committee members about sort of the inspiration behind the piece. We really wanted to raise awareness of sexual assault and sexual harassment happening during the university experience, and we really wanted to create a show that was truthful and accurate, and that this is why we'd sort of contacted them, because unfortunately Northumbria University did have an It Happens Here society that also tried to raise awareness of sexual assault at university like they do. But unfortunately, the committee members from Northumbria University have now graduated, and since then the society isn't as active as the Newcastle one. So this is why we've spoken to the It Happens Here Newcastle society. I'll just sort of say again, the aim of the society itself is to raise awareness of sexual assault and harassment happening at university, as well as to raise awareness of Newcastle University support available for victims of sexual abuse. So basically, we just sort of started off talking about why we wanted to do the project. They were really supportive of the project. They were really getting behind it, and they're really excited about coming to see it in the end, which is really great. They mentioned that the society is quite active. They've got quite a few members, and they've also had sort of experiences where at certain meetings where they've had sort of like society fairs and things, they mentioned that people would come up to them and talk to them about the sexual abuse that they'd experienced and then just walk away. This was crazy to me. I never even thought of this sort of thing happening. They'd also mentioned that, because I mentioned my own worries about how the project would be received because of the subject matter, and they said that although they do get negative comments sometimes, it is sort of just part of working with this issue, is unfortunately that there's so many different opinions about different aspects of sexual assault and harassment, that sometimes there are people who are quite negative about talking about it. They're not very positive about raising awareness, and they kind of just reassured me that that is something that happens, but unfortunately you just have to keep going. This for me was quite encouraging, because as a writer I've been quite concerned about how my writing about this huge issue was going to be received, specifically by males, actually, because we're focusing so much on the female experience of sexual assault and harassment, when I am obviously aware that there are also male victims of sexual assault and harassment. But this sort of just reassured me, and this made me feel like as a writer it's okay to talk about these subjects and to not be afraid to do it, which is always great. So yeah, this sort of just raised my confidence a little bit in my own sort of ability to write, which is kind of one of the bigger sort of issues with this project for myself, is sort of having the confidence to write about a difficult subject matter and not be afraid to do it as much as I can and as well as I can for this project. So then we went on to talk about we asked questions to them, because we felt that they had more of a knowledge of this kind of subject area than us. They're working directly with students who have experienced sexual assault or abuse, so we felt that they had like an invaluable amount of knowledge that we could use, and certainly that I could use in order to write a really good production. So my main question was there any kinds of sexual assault, is there any kind of sort of common things that people seem to be experiencing at university? They did talk about how sort of the drinking culture of university, how it kind of is sort of expected that people go out drinking a lot, and when people go out drinking, their behaviour is different. And there has been times where sort of they've said that somebody's gone out for a few drinks and something's happened, and they've been unsure about whether to sort of, take it seriously or not, because they've been in that kind of environment where they've been drinking, as well as probably the person who has acted inappropriately, has been drinking. And it really did get me thinking about the fact that it was strange how in one sort of setting, the kind of behaviour that people exhibit is considered inappropriate. It's not correct, and yet in a sort of setting where there was drink involved or something like that, there seems to be a more of a lenient judgment of behaviour, and that is something that I'd never thought about before. But it's something that I'm really going to consider when I'm writing the production. We also really talked about, they really wanted us to talk about the power relationship between sort of the power imbalance between a victim and an attacker. They really wanted me as a writer to really look into the fact that when somebody becomes a victim of a crime of this sort, they have the power completely taken away from them, and they are powerless in a way. They have no power, whereas the attacker or the aggressor has all of the power. And they really wanted me to explore this as a writer. This is something that I'd never thought of exploring, but I'm really excited to look into the power relationships and how I can include that in the show. When I say I'm excited to do it, I mean I'm excited to sort of get into the writing of the play and think of it that way. But no, I just wanted to do it justice, and I would like to show sort of the power imbalance between the attacker and the victim, and hopefully create a show that sort of empowers the victim and sort of empowers people to think, if this has happened to me, I can report it and it's not a bad thing, and it's not my fault, really. Another issue that all of them really spoke about, especially Faye and Shannon, was about the idea that we could include a plot line in our production that involved the relationship between a lecturer and a student, because they felt that this was quite a common thing to happen, probably more common than myself realised, and that we should really explore this issue and explore the blurring of the lines between sort of educator and student. Initially, I was quite frightened to write about this because it is still kind of a taboo subject. It's still kind of something that I think a lot of people are quite uncomfortable with. But in a way, the way that the girls were talking about it, it was really something that they wanted to see in the production if we could. They really wanted a representation of this kind of relationship and how the student is powerless really in this relationship. The character that I think will be my character, I'll be portraying this character, I think will be shown to be powerless compared to, the lecturer or the professor, whoever it is that turns out to be her, the aggressor in the sort of event that happens to my character. They really wanted me to explore how the teacher or the lecturer in that situation has so much more power than the student. They have power over not over them just emotionally, but they have power over them in terms of how they do in their education, possibly. And they really wanted us to explore this further in our production. So this is a new storyline that I think we're going to include in the production. Actually, I think my character is going to experience this kind of relationship. But this was a really interesting sort of point of view that I'd never considered before. So I'm really glad that my character now can have a completely different story arc to Hara's character, and it's a story arc that is, has been said to us, this is what we want you to show. Can you show this? And I'm very it makes me quite proud as a writer to be able to say I've spoken to these people and I've taken what they've said and I've sort of infused it into the work, or I will infuse it into the work that I will be creating. This is something I've never really done before as a writer. I've never really had different viewpoints and then thought about them and then just sat and written a script. So I'm quite excited to get to do this as we get nearer to the point of me writing the script. Just additionally, Faye invited both Hara and myself, although I think it'll just be me attending, to go to a panel that will be hosted at Newcastle University for the Women for Women International. Basically, where it will be a panel of young people talking about sexual assault and abuse at universities, how universities, with a certain sort of focus on Newcastle University, how universities deal with victims of sexual assaults. Is it satisfactory or not? But also another point of this this panel is we're going to, before we have this discussion, we're going to watch the open class production of Key Change, which was written, basically it is the true stories of these women in prison, of these several women who are in prison in the UK, and their sort of stories about how they've ended up in the prison system. I've already seen this production live, actually. I saw it in my first year at university, but we will be watching it again, and then during the panel we will be discussing how theatre can be used, such as the work of Open Class, which has hugely inspired Hara and myself to do this, to make our production, how this kind of theatre raises awareness of the public's awareness of certain issues, and if it's effective or not in terms of changing people's viewpoints or not. But overall, the meeting was really positive. It really did sort of reignite the fire in me again to do this project and do it right and do it the best I can. So I'm really happy with how the meeting went. I'm really looking forward to going to the panel, because I think that'll also be great. And yeah, it just went really well, and it feels really nice to have that support there. I think that the support of knowing that there are people who want this project to work and they want it to go well. And yeah, I just feel really positive. I feel a lot more positive, I think, than I had been previously. A lot less nervous about tackling the challenge of writing this project and performing this project. So yeah, I'll be back again for the next post, and thank you very much.